It was March 4th, 2025, a gray Tuesday night in Church Hill, the kind that carried the smell of wet asphalt and leftover rain. I was still at my small desk finishing a client report for the restaurant downtown that barely made payroll. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I didn't notice until my phone buzzed. One new message from my sister. "Don't come over." That was it. No heart emoji, no follow-up. Just 3 words that sliced through the quiet like glass. I stared at the screen, waiting for more, maybe a mistake, but the typing bubble never came. When I opened Instagram a minute later, the answer was already waiting. My mother and sister were live. The family night dinner. The same one I'd bought groceries for last month. The same house where the electricity and internet bills still came out of my account to make things easier. On screen, Sierra was pouring wine laughing. "We cut the toxic energy," she said, and my mother, Patty, smiled beside her. Someone off camera joked, "That chipped mug of hers still around." They all laughed. My throat burned, but I couldn't look away. Then I saw it, the slow cooker on the counter, the one I'd saved for months to buy Mom during Black Friday. She'd posted about it last year. Tonight, Sierra was bragging, "I bought it for Mom. She deserves something nice." I almost laughed. The kind of laugh that sounds like it might break something. Then came another ping. A Zelle request from Sierra, $500 ER copay. Mom's chest hurts. I didn't even hesitate. My thumb hovered over send, the same reflex I'd trained into muscle memory. Then seconds later, I saw her new story. She was at Short Pump Mall holding a Louis Vuitton bag, tagging it self-care after a scare. My stomach dropped. The same caption as last time, the same pattern, my money, her performance. I didn't know what hurt more, the lie or how normal it felt by now. I shut my laptop, grabbed my coat, and drove toward Mechanicsville. The windshield wipers squeaked across a film of drizzle and pollen. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly the leather creaked. I told myself I just needed to talk to understand. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Mom didn't know about the post. The house looked warm from the outside. Golden light spilling through lace curtains. Cars lined the driveway, Sierra's new SUV, Mom's Honda, even Aunt Linda's old truck. Through the window, I could see shadows moving, laughter carrying through thin walls. My hand shook as I rang the bell. The door cracked open. Mom stood there with a towel over her shoulder, the smell of roast chicken behind her. Sierra leaned on the doorframe beside her perfect hair, perfect smirk. "Don't come over," she said again, like I was a delivery she hadn't ordered. Mom added softly, "You bring drama, sweetheart. Let's not do this tonight." Then the door closed, just like that. The rain started again, thin and steady. For a second, I thought I might scream or cry or both. Instead, I took out my phone. I opened my banking app and scrolled through a year of emergencies. March, $600 for a dental crisis. April, $200 for car repairs. June, $300 for medicine. December, $2,000 for holiday shortfall. $23,000 in total. I tapped screen record. Every payment, every note, every matching social post. "Rocks don't cry," I whispered. "Rocks keep receipts." My voice sounded strange, hollow, but steady. Then my phone buzzed again. An overdraft alert. Auto payments for the house bills had just cleared electricity, gas, and internet, all still under my name. I leaned against my car, the cold seeping through my coat. The screen lit up once more. A message from Sierra, "Don't be dramatic, baby. Family only. Family only." I read it twice, then hit save on every screenshot I'd just taken. The drizzle turned heavier, tapping the roof of my car in uneven rhythm. I realized I wasn't shaking from the cold. It was something else. The kind of clarity that only comes when you finally had enough. I didn't know it yet, but that night would be the last time they shut me out of my own family. Because after that message, I stopped trying to knock. I started keeping track. I didn't cry in the car. I just sat there breathing in. The sound of the rain, and opened a blank spreadsheet titled Emergencies. Not theirs, mine. If you've ever been the one paying the bills while being called the problem, stay with me. This isn't just a story about money. It's a story about receipts, about the price of love when it's one-sided, and about what happens when the quiet one finally hits play. When people talk about family in Richmond, they always mean the kind of Sunday dinners where everyone brings a dish and no one talks about money. In my family, money was the dish, served cold and invisible. My father died when I was 17, a quiet man who believed in paying everything on time. After the funeral, Mom said we had to pull together. Family first, she kept repeating as if it were a prayer. I believed her. I was 19 when she added me to the family phone plan, the Costco membership, and the utility auto pay. It will make things easier for me, she said, smiling through the kitchen steam. It did make things easier for her. The bills just disappeared into my account each month like clockwork. By 25, I had a 705 credit score, a steady job at a small accounting firm downtown, and about $6,200 in savings. I thought I was doing well for someone my age. I thought being responsible meant being loved. My sister, Sierra, was the opposite. She drifted from job to job, living half her life online. Her boyfriend, Colin, always had a new idea. He called them ventures. Last year, it was a boutique that sold custom sweatshirts printed with affirmations. He convinced Sierra to open a joint account with Mom's name attached, just for transparency. Somehow, my credit card ended up as the backup payment. I didn't know until the monthly summary arrived buried among the utilities. When I asked Mom about it, she said, "Sweetheart, you know Sierra. She just needs a little help getting started." Then came the phrase that felt like a leash around my neck. "You're the rock of this family." Sierra laughed from the couch. "Rocks don't have feelings," she said. "They just sit there while everyone else builds their lives on them." The joke landed harder than it should have. Rocks don't have feelings. I said nothing. The next week, Sierra called crying. Grandpa Earl had another hospital visit. She said Mom was panicking and asked me to transfer $450 to cover a copay. The bill came under Mom's name, she said between sniffles. "You can Zelle me. I'll send it to the hospital." I didn't question it. I just sent the money. Later that night, I logged into the VCU health portal to double-check. There was no record of any charge, no upcoming appointments. I stared at the blank page for a long time. It could have been an honest mistake, but the next day, Sierra posted a picture of a seafood platter with the caption, "Family Recovery Dinner." The timing matched too perfectly. I started noticing the patterns after that. Each family emergency had a receipt that looked suspiciously like a luxury. Each plea for help ended with Sierra showing off something new. A bracelet, a dinner out, a weekend trip. At first I told myself she was just trying to live her life. But one Friday afternoon, I opened a copy of Mom's electric bill. The name at the top said Payer Maya Quinn. My own address wasn't listed anywhere. I checked the water bill. Same thing. Somehow my name had been moved into the payer box on 2 utility accounts for a house I didn't live in. I called the company and asked how that could happen. "Authorized household change," the clerk said. "Happens all the time." I hung up with the polite smile I use for clients when I want to scream. That weekend, Mom called just to chat. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," she said. "You always take care of us." I wanted to tell her I knew, that I saw my name on every account. Instead, I looked around my apartment. The peeling paint. The mug with a crack so deep it almost split in half. I whispered, "Family first right." The next morning, I printed every bill from the online accounts. Electricity, water, gas. Each page with my name at the top. I took out a stack of yellow Post-it notes and wrote in small, steady letters, "Paid by Maya." I stuck one on every bill, folded them neatly, and placed them in an envelope addressed to Mom. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. When the postal clerk asked if I wanted insurance, I smiled. "No need. It's just a record." She stamped it and handed me the slip. I tucked it into my wallet like a talisman. At home, I brewed coffee and watched the tracking number update. It arrived 2 days later. Mom didn't call to ask why. She never mentioned it at all. But a week later, Sierra sent a group text, "We're having family dinner Saturday, just immediate family. Hope you understand." I typed back one word. Got it. For the first time, I meant it differently. I was starting to understand. At work that Monday, I double-checked my credit report. 2 hard inquiries appeared under accounts I didn't open, both linked to household services at Mom's address. I could almost hear Sierra's voice. "You're the responsible one. We knew you'd get approved." That night, I wrote down everything I'd paid in a notebook labeled Family Ledger. Electricity $72, gas $65, internet $84, phone plan $120, month after month. Each line felt like a confession I didn't know I'd made. By the time I finished, the total was nearly $6,000 over 2 years, not counting the emergencies. I sat on the floor with the pages spread around me like a paper storm. The worst part wasn't the money. It was realizing how normal it had become for me to fix everything. Somewhere between helping and being used, I had lost track of myself. The phone buzzed again. A message from Mom, just reminding you to pay the gas before the 12th. I'm out of checks. I looked at it for a long moment, then opened the banking app and removed her account from autopay. For the first time, I felt the quiet that follows a small rebellion. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was the sound of something shifting like a rock beginning to crack. Maybe that was how change really started. Not with shouting, but with silence that finally meant no. I closed my laptop and whispered to the empty room. Paid by Maya. For records. The words didn't sound bitter anymore. They sounded like a beginning. Labor Day of 2024 came with perfect weather blue skies that made Richmond look kinder than it was. At Bryan Park, families were spreading blankets, grilling burgers, waving flags for the end of summer. My phone buzzed as I packed up my laptop from the cafe. A message from Mom. Family-only dinner tonight at the park. Hope you understand. I read it twice, my thumb hovering over reply, then closed the phone. I understood too well. Family only had become a code. It meant everyone except me. Later that evening, I sat in my car near the park entrance. Through the trees, I could see the flicker of string lights, paper plates stacked high, the same picnic set I had bought for Mom 2 years ago. Laughter drifted toward me, muffled by distance. Then my phone lit up again. Sierra was live on Instagram. Her caption said, "Family only night, letting go of the toxic." She panned the camera around the picnic table. Mom was there waving. Aunt Linda. Even Grandpa Earl smiling weakly from his wheelchair. I watched the screen like someone pressing on a bruise. A woman from their church commented, "So glad to see the family together again." Sierra replied, "Feels peaceful without all the drama." Someone in the background laughed and said, "That one's always asking about money. No wonder she's single." The chat flooded with heart emojis and laughing faces. I stared until my phone dimmed. It was one thing to be left out. It was another to be turned into a joke. That night, I didn't cry. I logged into my credit account to check a payment. A red flag popped up. Late fee, $39. Authorized user delay. I knew immediately what it was. Sierra's card, the one she swore she paid on time. My credit score dropped 23 points because of her. I could almost hear her voice explaining it away. It's just a mix-up. The kind of mix-up that always landed on me. The next morning I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and decided to change the rules. First I logged into the bank. I removed Sierra as an authorized user. Then I reset every password linked to Mom's shared accounts. I turned on 2-factor authentication and disconnected the family phone line I had been paying since college. It took less than 15 minutes. A small click each time I hit confirm. Somewhere across town, Sierra's phone would lose connection. The thought made me smile for the first time in weeks, a quiet, private smile. Later that afternoon, I checked her page out of curiosity. The live stream had cut off mid-sentence. The caption read, "Connection lost. Will restart soon." The comments were full of confused followers. It wasn't revenge exactly. It was balance. The next day, an envelope arrived. It was from the bank. Inside was the formal notice of the late payment and a warning about potential penalties. I read every line slowly. It wasn't just money anymore. It was my name being chipped away bit by bit. That evening, while sorting papers, I stumbled across a GoFundMe link shared in the family chat weeks earlier. Help Mom's Health Journey. It showed a smiling picture of Mom with Sierra hugging her. The goal was $5,000. The caption mentioned medical bills and stress of supporting an ungrateful family member. I scrolled through the comments, donations from church friends, co-workers, even my old college roommate. People praising Sierra for being a caring daughter. I checked the updates section. 3 days after the fundraiser ended, Sierra posted, "Mom is recovering. Thank you all. Funds will go toward therapy and rest." Under that, a photo from a restaurant downtown. Balloons, champagne cake with the words, "Happy Birthday, Sierra." The GoFundMe account listed Colin as the beneficiary. I opened the Cash App screenshots she had posted weeks later. The same names appeared. The donations had gone straight into his account. I sat there staring at the screen, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. It was so absurd, it almost became funny. Almost. I took screenshots labeled each one by date and saved them in a new folder named Truth. My stomach ached, not from anger, but from the hollow space where belief used to live. I didn't want to tell anyone yet. Not Mom, not the police, not even Aunt Denise. I wanted proof that couldn't be ignored, proof that couldn't be twisted into family drama. I was still thinking about that when my inbox pinged. A new email from the electric company. Payment overdue. Scheduled termination notice. I frowned. I had removed Mom's account from autopay a week ago. It should have been fine. Then I looked closer. The notice was for the account still under my name. The total was higher than usual, $180 more. I clicked the breakdown. Service upgrade premium package, NFL Sunday ticket. I laughed an empty sound in the quiet room. Sierra didn't even watch football. Colin did. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. The absurdity had crossed into something else, a kind of numbness that was both terrifying and calm. My entire life I thought being good meant being useful, that the more I gave, the safer I was from being unloved. But sitting there under the flicker of my kitchen light, I realized something simple and sharp. You can't buy your place at the table if they already sold your chair. The phone buzzed again, another group photo from Bryant Park. This one captioned, "Family First." I didn't open it. I was done watching from outside. Instead, I opened my credit app again and requested a credit freeze. Then I drafted an email to the bank to dispute the late fee. When it asked for a reason, I typed "authorized user abuse." The words felt heavy but right. Before going to bed, I checked Sierra's page one more time. Her story was back up a filtered video of her laughing in a cafe saying, "Nothing breaks me." I smiled faintly. "We'll see," I whispered. My phone lit up once more with the glow of the unpaid bill. I ignored it, shut off the lamp, and let the darkness settle like armor. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The emergencies started small, almost believable. In September, Sierra said she needed $200 for a flat tire, promising to pay me back on Friday. By November, it was $600 for wisdom tooth surgery, followed by $300 for gas leak repairs at Mom's house. And by January, $400 for new medication that Mom supposedly needed. Each message sounded urgent, each one ending with "thank you for always saving us." I tracked every payment in the spreadsheet I had named Truth, and as the months stacked up, so did the numbers. By summer, the total had reached $23,000, all tagged as emergencies. I could recite them by heart the way some people recite prayers. The pattern was always the same. Sierra would text with panic. Colin would send a short follow-up saying he had covered part of it already, and within days I would see a new purchase appear on her Instagram stories, a handbag, a spa visit, once a new set of rims for Colin's car. The wheel set cost almost exactly what the hospital copay had been. I had learned to read the timeline between guilt and indulgence. When Mom called me one Sunday, her tone carried that practiced sweetness that always made me brace. "You shouldn't stress about money, sweetheart. That's what family is for," she said. I swallowed a laugh. "It seems I'm the only one who got the memo." She sighed. "You know how Sierra is. She just doesn't have your discipline. Don't let her struggles make you bitter. Later that week, I opened my bank statement and saw a chargeback request from an Etsy store registered under Sierra's name. Her boutique had apparently refunded a customer for damaged merchandise, and the account had used my card as the default backup. I stared at the number $74 not for the amount, but for the principal. It was like they were testing how far I could bend before breaking. The next weekend, Mom stopped by my apartment unannounced, bringing leftover pie and a list of complaints. "You're living too frugally, Maya," she said, looking around at the tiny studio with its chipped mug and thrift store table. "You should treat yourself once in a while. Maybe if you smiled more, things would come your way." I wanted to ask her what had come her way besides my paychecks, but instead I poured coffee and nodded. Then she said the line that landed like a slap. "You spend too much on yourself. No wonder you struggle." I looked down at my cracked mug, the same one she used to mock in front of others. "You're right," I said quietly. "Maybe I should spend less." That night I reviewed every emergency payment again, highlighting each one in bright yellow. It felt like shining a flashlight into a dark room. The following morning, while I was at work, my phone buzzed with another message from Sierra. "ER again. Mom's dizzy. Need copay $300. I stared at the screen without replying. My pulse stayed calm for the first time. Something felt off. Within an hour, she posted a photo from the Jefferson Hotel. Afternoon tea service, fine china captioned "Grateful for small blessings." The date and time matched the hospital claim she had just sent. My hands went cold. That night, I decided to confirm what I already suspected. I called the VCU Health Front Desk and asked if they had any record of a visit under Mom's name that day. After a long pause, the nurse said no, there was no patient registered. I thanked her and hung up. 2 days later, I drove to the clinic myself. A nurse named Valerie was working the front desk. She remembered Mom. "Your mother hasn't been in since last spring," she said, her eyes cautious. But I shouldn't say more. I told her I just needed to know if there were any emergency records. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Between you and me, we've had multiple calls asking for invoices without visits. It's been flagged." I showed her a screenshot of Sierra's message with the date. Valerie's face changed. "That's the day there was a private event at the Jefferson," she said quietly. "Your sister checked in there, didn't she?" My stomach tightened. "She posted it online." Valerie sighed. "Then you already have your answer." Driving home, I could barely feel my hands on the wheel. The city lights blurred together as if Richmond itself was pretending not to see. That night, I pulled out all the highlighted statements and laid them across my kitchen floor. It looked like a crime scene built from paper. I wasn't sure who I was angrier at, Sierra for lying or myself for believing her every time. The next morning, I printed a fresh copy of the spreadsheet, taped a note at the top, and slid it into an envelope. The note said, "Requesting prayer for financial honesty. Dates correspond to claimed emergencies." I mailed it to the church office where Mom volunteered as treasurer. I didn't accuse anyone. I just asked for prayer. It was petty, maybe even cruel, but it was the kind of quiet cruelty that tasted like justice. That evening, Mom called. Her voice was unusually sharp. "Did you send something to Pastor Mills?" I kept my tone even. "Just an update for the prayer board. Transparency matters, right?" There was a long pause. "You've always had a way of making people uncomfortable, Maya." I smiled at the wall. "Only the dishonest ones." She hung up without another word. Later that week, Aunt Denise texted me. "Whatever you did the church meeting was interesting. Keep your head high." I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. The next time I checked Sierra's page, her captions were suddenly about boundaries and fake friends. I knew she meant me. I also noticed her boutique had gone quiet. The last post was an apology for delayed orders due to unforeseen personal matters. Maybe a few highlighted receipts had done more than prayer could. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. In the darkness, I realized I no longer cared about being the good daughter. I wanted to be the honest one, the one who stopped pretending family meant forgiveness at any cost. The spreadsheet sat open on my desk, glowing faintly. I renamed it again, Justice Ledger. It felt like a promise. By February, the game had changed. The money tricks had grown more sophisticated, wrapped in polite language and legal words that felt foreign on my tongue. One evening, Mom called to say she needed to update some paperwork. "It is just temporary power of attorney," she explained lightly. "In case anything happens to me, Sierra can handle the bills." I asked if I was listed anywhere. "You have your own life, sweetheart," she said. "It is simpler this way." The next week, an envelope arrived from the family lawyer. The document inside named Patty Quinn and Sierra Quinn as joint agents. My name was nowhere. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the empty line where my signature should have been. The irony stung. I had paid for most of those bills, but I had no power to even ask where the money went. A week later, the tax season began. Mom texted that her accountant needed my signature to claim me as a dependent. "It will help with her tax credit," she said. "It is just a formality." I laughed quietly. I was 25, living alone, paying for 2 households. "That would be tax fraud," I said. She called it ungrateful. "Everything I do is for the family," she snapped before hanging up. I stared at the phone until the screen went black, wondering how long I had mistaken control for love. The following Monday, while reviewing my own tax documents at work, I noticed something odd on the credit report attached to my file. A hard inquiry from a car leasing company. I had not applied for anything. I called them. The representative pulled up the record. "It shows co-signer Maya Quinn for a vehicle registered to Colin Marks," she said. "A digital signature on file." My pulse jumped. "Can you email me that signature?" When it arrived, I opened the PDF. It was my name written in perfect imitation, even the slant of my letters. I felt cold all over. Someone had forged my e-signature. Colin had leased a car using my credit. I called Mom immediately. She sounded annoyed, not shocked. "He must have mixed up some paperwork," she said. "It is all in the family." That phrase again, "in the family," meaning untraceable. I knew then I needed help beyond polite conversations. I made an appointment with a local attorney named Martin Alvarez. His office smelled of coffee and paper. After listening quietly, he leaned back and said, "You are dealing with financial identity theft and possible fraud. It will get worse before it gets better." He taught me how to place a fraud alert on my accounts, how to request a credit freeze from all 3 bureaus, and how to file a report with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the FTC. I spent the rest of that week sending emails, verifying calls, building folders of evidence. Each confirmation felt like one small stone removed from a wall they had built around me. When I finished, I slept better than I had in months. But the peace did not last long. One afternoon, an email arrived from Mom's shared Google Drive. She had meant to send it to Sierra, but accidentally copied me. The subject line read, "Estate Draft Notes." I almost deleted it, thinking it was about Grandpa Earl's will, but curiosity made me click. Inside was a folder labeled Distribution. My heart pounded as I opened it. Spreadsheets, documents, and a scanned note from a paralegal. The first file was titled Proposed Allocation. Under Sierra's name were the house savings bonds and jewelry. Under Mom's name were investments and insurance. Next to my name, a single word, none. I scrolled further down and saw a comment bubble Sierra had left on the document. "Mom, are you sure she might contest it?" Mom's reply was short. "She will not know until after. Keep it private." I stared at the words until they blurred. Private. The word they used for everything that benefited them. My chest felt tight, the air thick. I downloaded the entire folder and forwarded it to my personal drive before they noticed. That night, I sat in my apartment reading every file. There was even a mock email draft from Mom to the lawyer explaining that I had declined my share voluntarily. My name was being used to erase me from my own family record. I shut my laptop and pressed my palms against my eyes until I saw stars. I did not cry. There was no room left for tears, just a steady, hollow anger that felt almost clean. The next morning, I called Martin and told him what I had found. He asked me to send everything, keep every communication he said. People who hide money usually hide more than that. While printing the documents at work, my phone began to buzz with an unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. "This is Maya." A male voice replied, "This is a courtesy call from Premier Collections regarding your outstanding balance on the grocery account." My breath caught. I do not have a grocery account. He read out the address. It was Mom's. I hung up without replying, then checked my credit report again. A new account had appeared in my name, a supermarket charge card with a balance of $498. They had opened a credit line pretending to be me. That evening I drove to Mom's house. Mom's. The lights were on, laughter spilling through the window. I did not knock. I sat in my car watching silhouettes move across the curtains, thinking about the file labeled none and the voice of the collector repeating my name. For a long time, I stayed there, engine off, listening to the hum of crickets. Then I opened my notes app and typed a single sentence. "They are stealing from me while calling it love." The next day, I sent a formal dispute to the credit company and copied the documentation to the FTC report. I included screenshots of the forged signature, the estate folder, and the false grocery card. When I pressed, sent a calm, settled over me. The kind of calm that follows exhaustion. The kind that whispers they will not see you coming. Late that night, Mom texted, "Family dinner Sunday. Sierra wants to make peace." I stared at the words and felt nothing. Maybe peace was just another word they used when they were about to take something else. I closed my phone and whispered to the quiet room, "Let them plan. I am planning too." The winter that followed felt endless. Every day a new envelope arrived stamped in red or marked urgent. Debt collectors, late notices, credit alerts. My once perfect score of 705 had dropped to 676. I stopped checking the mail after a while. Each letter felt like another small humiliation written in numbers I did not owe. At night, I lay awake listening to the radiator hiss and the walls creak, wondering if this was how it felt to be erased one bill at a time. One night, a message arrived from Sierra. "Mom is at the ER again. They need $2,000 for immediate release." My thumb hovered over the banking app. For a second, I almost did it. The habit of rescuing runs deep. But then I saw the timestamp. 10 minutes earlier, Sierra had posted a photo of her nails, perfectly manicured, captioned "Self-Care Day." My breath slowed. I set the phone down and whispered, "Not this time." The next morning, my friend Jenna stopped by. She'd been watching me unravel for months with the quiet patience of someone who knew the exact shape of grief. She set a cup of chamomile tea on my desk and studied me. "You look like a rock," she said softly. I gave a tired laugh. "Rocks don't cry." She tilted her head. "No, but rocks break too." The words landed heavier than I expected. I closed my eyes and felt them echo in the quiet. That afternoon, I sat at my desk staring at the spreadsheet that had grown into a graveyard of numbers. $23,000 of emergencies that were never real. I decided to give them what they had asked for all along: accountability. I opened a new document and titled it Invoice of Love. Line by line, I listed every payment, each with its original date and purpose. Emergency dental visit, $450. Tire replacement, $200. Copay, ER visit, $600. Beside each entry, I added a note in parentheses: luxury brunch nail set designer handbag. I ended with a total, $23,000 even. At the bottom, I typed the final line in bold letters: please remit within 30 days. Interest charged in dignity over money. Then I attached the file to an email addressed to both Patty and Sierra with the subject line Family Accounting Update. No explanation, just the invoice. I hit send and leaned back, laughing quietly to myself. It was the first laugh that did not taste bitter. Within minutes, Sierra replied with a single emoji, the rolling eyes. Mom sent a longer message. "This is cruel, Maya. You are humiliating your own family." I wrote back, "No, I am itemizing." I never heard another word. The silence felt like oxygen. Later that week, I met Martin and Detective Whitman in his office. Whitman was calm, deliberate, the kind of man who measured words like currency. Valerie from the clinic had agreed to help providing logs and confirmation that no medical visits had occurred on the days Sierra requested money. Martin spread the evidence across the table. Screenshots of Sierra's social media posts beside bank transfers, copies of forged signatures, the estate folder. It looked clinical and damning. "You have enough," Martin said. "We can file a civil suit and request an investigation for elder financial abuse." Whitman nodded. "I will take statements from Valerie and your bank. The forged e-signature strengthens the case." I sat there staring at the pile of papers, a mountain of truth built from years of silence. "Will they go to jail?" I asked quietly. Whitman's eyes softened. "Maybe not yet, but they will be seen. And that matters." The thought of visibility was strangely comforting. For so long, I had been the invisible one, the payer who did not exist. Now my receipts had faces, dates, evidence. That night, I gathered every document into a single binder and labeled it Receipts for Peace. I slipped it into my desk drawer and locked it. The simple click of the lock sounded final. Around midnight, I received another message from Sierra. "You are ruining everything. We were supposed to handle this as a family." I stared at it for a long moment before typing back, "Family stopped when you forged my name." I pressed send and turned off my phone. For the first time in months, the silence did not frighten me. It felt like rest. Over the next few days, I helped Martin compile the official complaint. He walked me through each form, patiently explaining how to report to the Consumer Bureau and how to secure every account. Valerie sent her signed affidavit. The puzzle pieces were falling into place with a precision that felt almost beautiful. When I met Whitman again, he handed me a business card with his direct number. "Call if they contact you for money or forgiveness," he said. "Do not engage. We prefer quiet justice." I smiled. Quiet justice is my specialty. That evening, as the city lights reflected against the window, I opened the ledger one last time. Each highlighted line glowed faintly under the lamp. I traced my finger down the total and whispered no more. Somewhere in another part of Richmond, Sierra was probably complaining to friends Mom was likely rewriting the story. But it no longer mattered. The truth was already moving slow and steady like water finding its way through stone. The next morning, I mailed copies of the binder to Martin's office and Whitman's department. When I dropped the package at the post office, the clerk asked if I wanted delivery confirmation. "No," I said, smiling. "They will know when it arrives." On the walk home, I passed by the river. The air smelled of rain, the kind that promises a storm. I thought about Jenna's words. Rocks break, too. Maybe breaking was not the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something stronger. I pulled out my phone and wrote a note to myself. Quiet justice starts with a single no. That line stayed on my screen for a long moment, reflecting the light of the river, before I slipped the phone back into my pocket. The storm clouds gathered above, soft and dark, and for once I did not feel afraid. The day I finally said no felt quieter than I imagined. It was a Thursday morning, the sky a dull gray over Richmond, the kind of color that hides its own light. Mom had texted again, asking for another transfer for an emergency. I stared at the message for a full minute before typing 2 words. No more. When she called, her voice was sharp and trembling. "What do you mean, no more, Maya? This is your mother." I took a slow breath. Every request from now on requires an original bill and hospital verification. No proof, no payment. There was a silence on the line so long I thought she had hung up. Then came her voice, lower, colder. "You are cutting yourself off from this family." Before I could answer, Sierra's voice echoed in the background. "She already did. She is just a wallet with legs." The line went dead. For a few seconds, I just sat there, phone still in my hand, feeling the weight of it all pressed down like a final verdict. It did not hurt the way I expected. It was just empty, like the pause after a storm when you know the landscape has changed for good. Later that afternoon, I met Detective Whitman at Martin's office. He had officially filed the report for suspected elder financial abuse and identity theft. Valerie had provided the security footage from the clinic, showing Sierra leaving the hospital hallway without checking in or paying anything. The log confirmed there had been no appointment scheduled under Mom's name. The evidence was clean and damning. Whitman flipped through the printed pages. They built a pattern, he said quietly. Every transfer follows the same scheme. False medical claim. Social post-spending spike. You did well keeping records. I gave a tired smile. Being an accountant finally paid off. Martin nodded. This is the reversal point, Maya. They have lived off your silence long enough. It is time you make that silence work for you. I thought about that phrase long after I left his office. Silence as strength, not submission. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by folders and receipts. I began reclaiming every password, every piece of digital ground they had used against me. I closed Sierra's access to the shared account, deleted the saved cards, changed every PIN, and revoked all authorized users. I felt like someone slowly pulling their own name out of quicksand. When I was done, I opened a new document that Martin had drafted for me. It was a cease and desist letter addressed to both Mom and Sierra. The language was formal and surgical. Any further use of my name or credit for personal or financial purposes would result in legal action. I printed 2 copies, signed them, and mailed them certified. The next day, Sierra sent a text filled with exclamation points. "You are insane. Who threatens their own mother?" I wrote back. "The same daughter who paid $23,000 for her lies." After that, the messages stopped. The silence that followed was not peaceful but necessary, the quiet before something larger. Over the next few days, I worked on the final piece. If words could be twisted, evidence could not. I opened my editing software and began building a video montage. Each clip was dated, every screenshot labeled. The first frame showed a timeline of the $23,000 in so-called emergencies. The next slides displayed the matching social media posts, the hospital logs from Valerie, and the bank statements. I layered them over the sound of a slow ticking clock, the kind that felt like judgment itself. At the end, I added the photos of Sierra at the Jefferson, her boutique refunds, the GoFundMe transfers, and the forged signature from the car lease. The final image was the spreadsheet total highlighted in yellow. Underneath, I wrote one sentence in white text on a black screen: truth and closure. I saved the video to a USB drive and labeled it by hand. The letters came out a little shaky, but they felt honest. That night, I sat on my couch holding the small silver stick between my fingers. It was almost nothing in weight, but it carried years of humiliation and proof. I whispered to the quiet room, "Min bash hoc im lang," transparency or silence. Either they would admit what they did or the world would. When I met Martin the next morning, he smiled faintly as I handed him the drive. "You are ready?" he said. "We will use this when the time comes." I nodded. I am done being their secret. On my way home, I stopped by the river again. The water was still cold, moving slowly under the gray sky. I remembered Mom's voice calling me a rock and Sierra's laugh echoing behind her. They had tried to carve my worth down to usefulness, but even rocks reshaped the current over time. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes. The line I had written weeks ago still waited there. Quiet justice starts with a single no. I added another beneath it. Truth comes after silence. Then I walked home under the drizzle, my steps steady the air sharp with the scent of something clean. I did not know yet that this small act of defiance would soon unravel everything they had built. All I knew was that the next time they spoke my name, it would not be in control, but in consequence. March 16th arrived with a sky too bright for what was about to happen. The Jefferson Hotel glimmered like a cathedral of old money in the center of Richmond. Its marble floors carried the sound of clinking glasses and quiet gossip. Mom loved this place. It was where Sierra said family felt elevated, which always meant expensive. That morning, she had posted a live countdown on her page. Sunday brunch. Family only. I watched it from the car parked outside, the same phrase that had excluded me now flashing on the screen. Inside, I could see them through the window. Mom, Sierra, Colin, even a few faces from their church. They looked picture-perfect champagne mimosas glistening under the chandeliers. I took a breath and stepped out of the car. Aunt Denise met me at the entrance, her eyes firm and calm. Behind her were Valerie in her nurse uniform and Martin, carrying a small projector case. We walked through the lobby together, the air thick with perfume and piano music. When we entered the banquet room, the laughter dipped into silence. Sierra froze mid-sentence, her phone still raised for the live stream. "What are you doing here?" she said flatly. I smiled. Family brunch, right. Mom's face went tight. "This is private." I nodded toward the camera in Sierra's hand. "It does not look private to me." She hesitated, lowering the phone but keeping the stream running. "You need to leave, Maya." Martin set the projector on the table and plugged it into a portable speaker. "Actually," he said politely, "we will just take a few minutes." The screen flickered to life on the cream wall behind them. The first image appeared, a spreadsheet titled Emergencies, highlighted in yellow. $23,000, I said clearly, every penny documented. The room went still except for the soft hum of the projector. The next slide showed the matching screenshots, Sierra's text messages, begging for hospital co-pays, side by side with her Instagram stories of dinners, new shoes and luxury handbags posted the same days. Murmurs rippled through the tables. Then came the hospital e-bill, the VCU health log, with a bold 0 under copay for each date she had claimed. Valerie stepped forward and said quietly, "No admissions under those names. I verified the records personally." Colin shifted in his seat, his face paling. The next sequence showed Cash App transfers from the GoFundMe accounts labeled Mom's Health Fund straight into Colin's handle. Then photos from the short pump boutique, Sierra posing with a new Louis Vuitton bag captioned "Self-Care After a Scare." I clicked to the next slide. An internal church email forwarded by Aunt Denise appeared on the screen. It was dated the same day as Sierra's NFL Sunday ticket purchase. Mom's message read, "Requesting urgent assistance from the emergency fund. Our family is in medical distress." The timestamp glowed at the corner. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind that swallows every sound in the room. I could hear the faint whir of the projector cooling fan. Aunt Denise crossed her arms. "You used church money for football," she asked quietly. Mom's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Sierra stood abruptly, pointing at me. "This is fake. You edited everything." Martin stepped closer, calm as ever. All records verified by independent sources. The files were retrieved legally under digital subpoenas. Sierra turned to her phone, maybe to cut the feed or spin a new story, but nothing happened. She stared at the screen, tapped again, then again. I watched her realize what I had already done. Her family phone line had been under my plan. I'd canceled it the night before. The live stream froze and blinked out. The comments stopped mid-sentence. Somewhere in that silence, a glass clinked. Mom reached for words and found none. "Maya," she whispered. "Finally, you didn't have to do this here." I looked at her across the table where the projector light flickered over half her face. Transparency or silence? You chose silence. I brought transparency. Detective Whitman, who had been sitting quietly near the back, rose and adjusted his badge. "We will take it from here." His voice was gentle, but firm. 2 uniformed officers entered the room, stepping beside him. Sierra's face drained of color. "You can't just barge in. This is family business." Whitman met her eyes. Family business becomes public when it crosses into fraud. Colin muttered something under his breath about misunderstanding, but the sound was swallowed by the collective stare of the room. I watched as one of the officers collected the printed statements from Martin's folder. Whitman nodded to me once. "You did the right thing." I exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that shakes loose months of tension. Around us, the brunch continued in uneasy silence. The waiters hovered at the edges, unsure whether to clear plates or stay frozen. Aunt Denise looked at me, her expression somewhere between pride and sorrow. Valerie placed a hand on my arm and whispered, "It is over." But it was not over. Not yet. The guests began whispering. A few had recognized the live stream before it ended. Phones buzzed with notifications as the clip replayed across social media. Toxic family, family betrayal, conflict justice. The comments were already multiplying, calling it poetic, unbelievable, and exactly what they deserved. Sierra's voice cracked. "You ruined us." I met her eyes. "No, you recorded it yourself." Then I gathered the projector and the USB labeled Truth and Closure, slipping it back into my bag. As we walked out, the air felt lighter, almost clean. The marble floors echoed under our steps, each sound a small drumbeat of freedom. Outside, the spring wind smelled like rain. I turned to Martin. "Do you think they understood?" He smiled faintly. "They will when the investigation finishes, and so will everyone else." We stood there for a moment under the grand awning of the Jefferson while cars passed in slow motion on Main Street. The sunlight caught the hotel's windows, throwing back a bright reflection that made me blink. For the first time in years, I did not feel like a ghost at the edge of my own story. I was visible standing in the open with proof instead of apologies. Somewhere behind us, the family that had called me toxic was finally silent. The weeks after the Jefferson felt like waking up in a different life. Everything that had been whispered in the dark was now on paper and under oath. The first official move came from Martin. He filed a civil claim demanding restitution for the $23,000 and a lien against Sierra and Colin's shared assets. Within days, Detective Whitman informed me that the Commonwealth attorney had approved a deeper investigation into elder financial abuse. The report included the forged car lease, the fake hospital bills, and the church fund misappropriation. Sierra's accounts were frozen pending review, and Colin received a subpoena to appear for questioning. When I read the notice in my inbox, I allowed myself a small smile. The same banks that once drained me were now draining them. The ripple spread fast. Credit bureaus added a fraud alert to my name, restoring some of my score, while the Consumer Bureau opened an active case regarding the grocery card account Sierra had opened illegally. She tried calling me 6 times in one day, each attempt ending at voicemail. Silence, it turned out, was the best firewall. Martin updated me daily. "They are scrambling," he said once. Colin claimed he never knew about the forged bills. Sierra blamed your mother. Your mother blamed divine misunderstanding. Classic chain of denial. He sounded amused, and for once I did too. Then came the social fallout. Aunt Denise told me that the church board had convened an emergency meeting after the video circulated online. The pastor spoke kindly but firmly, saying accountability must start at home. Patty was suspended from the finance committee indefinitely pending investigation. The GoFundMe page that had once collected sympathetic donations was flagged and taken down for fraud. The comments section turned cruelly honest. Words like manipulation, greed, and toxic family appeared again and again. In our small Richmond community, stories traveled faster than sermons. Neighbors began avoiding their house. Some stopped sending invitations. The same people who once called them blessed now whispered that justice had come. I did not gloat, but I did not hide my satisfaction either. Sierra's boutique suffered next. Her Etsy store was flooded with refund requests after customers learned about the investigation. The platform suspended her account when multiple chargebacks were filed. I heard from Valerie that Sierra tried selling leftover inventory on Facebook Marketplace, listing luxury handbags under fake names, but the comments exposed her instantly. Each post turned into a digital bonfire. Colin lost his side job after the dealership canceled his pending car order once they discovered his fraud alert flag. By April, he was working part-time delivering takeout, his income subject to wage garnishment. Sierra's small paycheck from the local spa was also garnished by court order, a portion sent directly to cover the restitution. Mom kept her head low. The church gossip burned hotter each week. Someone printed a copy of the emergency fund email and pinned it to the bulletin board. The caption, written in pen, read, "Accountability is love." I almost laughed when Aunt Denise sent me a photo of it. I had expected rage, maybe confrontation, but what I got was silence again, the kind that meant defeat. My credit score began to climb slowly as the disputes cleared. The fraud freeze worked exactly as Martin predicted. One afternoon while checking my accounts, I saw a balance in the positive for the first time in months. It felt absurdly emotional. Numbers had never made me cry until that moment. I called Jenna and said simply, "It's over." She answered, "No, it's balance." I celebrated quietly. I bought myself a new mug from a local shop, white ceramic with soft gold lettering. Then I thought of something that made me laugh out loud in the aisle. I returned home, wrapped the mug in tissue, and printed a receipt that read, "Gift receipt for Patty. Product boundaries. Price-free but earned." I mailed it to her house with no note. 3 days later, the tracking confirmed delivery. There was no reply. I like to imagine her opening the box, staring at the mug, and understanding nothing at all. Sometimes silence is louder than shouting. Whitman called again in mid-April. "The Commonwealth is moving forward," he said. "There will be restitution payments and likely probation terms for financial misconduct. Colin's plea is in progress." His tone was measured, but I could hear a trace of respect. "You kept your composure," he said. "Most people break before the truth comes out." I thanked him. "Rocks break too," I said quietly, "but they rebuild stronger." That night, I stood by my apartment window looking down at the quiet street of Church Hill. The lights glowed soft against the wet pavement. For the first time, I felt peace without guilt. No phone buzzing with demands, no guilt texts about emergencies that never existed, just space quiet and the faint hum of a world still turning. I thought about dignity over money and how those words had once sounded impossible when every bill carried my name. Now they were my rule. Silent revenge was not about destruction. It was about reclamation. Taking back time, credit, peace of mind. Each small victory, every refund, every legal notice was not loud, but it was precise. Like accounting itself, justice worked best when balanced. By early May, the case files reached conclusion. Sierra's accounts remained frozen. Colin agreed to a payment plan, and Patty signed a statement acknowledging misuse of church funds in exchange for community service instead of prosecution. It was poetic in a way. The woman who once preached charity would now clean the church she exploited. When Martin called with the news, I felt something release inside me. "It's done," he said simply. "You can let it rest." I looked around my apartment. The binder labeled Receipts for Peace sat neatly on the shelf. I smiled. It already has. As the sun set that evening, I brewed a fresh cup of coffee in my new mug, the one that said, "Boundaries." I lifted it to the window and whispered, "Here's to dignity over money." The city lights flickered in the distance, steady and forgiving. CTA. If you believe in silent revenge and emotional resilience, stay with me. Dignity over money is the discipline that saves us from ever being used again. By late May, Richmond had turned warm again, the kind of warmth that smells like magnolia and fresh asphalt. I was back to quiet routines, working, saving, rebuilding. The storm had passed, or so I thought. One afternoon as I was returning from the grocery store, I found Sierra standing by the steps of my apartment. She wore oversized sunglasses and the same entitled expression she used to wear before everything collapsed. "You never answered my messages," she said, trying to sound casual. I balanced the grocery bag against my hip. Because there was nothing left to say. She laughed softly. "You always were dramatic. I just need a favor, just a small thing. Colin and I are applying for a consolidation loan, but with all the court stuff, they want a co-signer. It's just temporary until we rebuild. I stared at her for a long moment, watching the nervous twitch in her hand. "You came here," I said slowly, after stealing $23,000 from me to ask me to sign another loan. She hesitated. "It's different now. I learned my lesson." Her voice cracked just enough to sound rehearsed. I set the groceries down and opened my tote bag, pulling out a folder labeled Boundary Agreement. I had written it weeks earlier for this exact possibility. I handed her the papers. "If you want to talk, you sign this first." She frowned, flipping through the pages. The first clause read, "No loans, no shared accounts, no co-signing." The second, "All communication through email for documentation." The third, "Any request for money must include original receipts and independent verification." The fourth violation results in legal escalation handled by counsel. She looked up, her lips curling. "This is insane. You're acting like I'm a criminal." I met her eyes. "Sierra, you are a criminal. You are just waiting for sentencing." The wind caught her hair, and for a brief moment, I saw the same girl I used to share a bedroom with, the one who would beg me to help her with homework, who cried when our father died. But whatever remained of that sister was long buried under her own greed. She threw the papers to the ground and hissed, "Mom says you are enjoying this, that you think you are some kind of hero." I smiled faintly. "No, I just stopped being the victim." She stomped down the steps, muttering curses, and disappeared into the car, idling at the curb. The license plate read Collins' old number. Some things never changed. Later that evening, Detective Whitman called. His tone was professional, but lighter than before. "We have final confirmation. Patty's involvement in the church fund misreporting is undeniable. The committee agreed on probation and community service in lieu of charges. They asked if you wanted to make a statement." I thought about it. "No," I said. "The work will say enough." He chuckled softly. "Probation and service might teach her humility. Maybe." Maybe I repeated, though I knew better. The next morning, Aunt Denise sent me a video that was making rounds on local Facebook groups. It showed Sierra sitting on the steps outside my building, fake crying, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, while someone recorded. The caption read, "Family karma hits different." In the background, you could see my welcome mat and the Boundaries mug sitting by the window. The comments were brutal. People recognized her from the brunch live stream and called it performance art. Some wrote lines like, "Justice has subtitles now," or "Never mess with an accountant." I laughed until my stomach hurt. It was darkly funny, the kind of irony that life writes better than any script. A few days later, the court issued the civil judgment. Sierra was ordered to pay restitution in monthly installments for the next 3 years with automatic deductions from her wages. She was also banned from accessing any financial accounts linked to my name, present or future. Martin sent me the official statement with a simple message, "Peace by paperwork." I forwarded it to Jenna with a note that said, "Closure has a balance due." Colin, on the other hand, faced his own reckoning. His Cash App account was frozen and later suspended entirely after fraud investigators tied multiple transfers to his name. Without access to digital payments, his business collapsed overnight. He disappeared from social media within a week. Valerie told me she heard from someone at the hospital that Sierra tried applying for a position there, but failed the background check because of the open restitution case. I pictured her trying to explain away the past and failing over and over again. It was not revenge anymore. It was arithmetic. Actions and consequences balancing each other until the ledger closed. One Sunday afternoon, while walking back from the farmer's market, I passed the church where Mom had once led prayer circles. She was outside wearing a neon vest collecting trash along the sidewalk with a group of volunteers. Her face was drawn older, her back slightly bent. For a moment, our eyes met. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but I nodded politely and kept walking. The distance between us was measured not in feet, but in peace. When I reached home, I sat by the window with tea and thought about everything that had happened. The phrase family only no longer hurt. It had become a filter for peace. Family was not about who demanded your loyalty, but who respected your boundaries. The phone buzzed once. It was an email from Sierra. The subject line read, "For old time's sake." The message was one sentence: "I forgive you." I stared at it, then clicked. Delete. Forgiveness from a liar was just another form of manipulation. I closed the laptop, poured another cup of tea, and smiled at the thought of silence returning. The story that had started with a text telling me not to come over had finally turned full circle. They had built walls of deceit, and I had built fences of boundaries. There was a difference. Fences protect both sides. Walls just isolate the guilty. The air outside was cooling again. Somewhere, a neighbor's dog barked, and the sound felt almost like punctuation, sharp and final. Summer came soft and clear over Richmond, and the air carried the scent of wet leaves and library books. Life had slowed into something that finally felt like mine. 6 months after the Jefferson brunch, I stood at a small podium inside the Richmond Public Library looking out at a dozen faces. The sign behind me read, "Receipts for Peace, How Not to Fund Toxic Family." It was my first community workshop, free and open to anyone who had ever been taken advantage of by people they loved. I had expected maybe 3 people, but the room filled fast. There were teachers, nurses, a retired postal worker, and a woman in her 60s who reminded me of Grandma Rose. I told them what I wish someone had told me years ago, that setting boundaries is not cruelty. That quiet accounting is a kind of justice. We spent an hour going over practical steps: how to set up a credit freeze, how to flag fraud alerts with Experian and TransUnion, how to file a case with the CFPB or FTC when family turns deceit into paperwork. I showed them how to dispute unauthorized charges and how to use certified mail so manipulative relatives cannot pretend they never received the notice. We even laughed when I added a section about Venmo and Zelle etiquette called the Gospel of No More Emergency Requests. The laughter was real, the kind that heals. When the workshop ended, a woman stayed behind and pressed my hand. Her eyes were watery but steady. "You made me feel less stupid," she said. I smiled. Then I did it right. Outside the library, the late afternoon light slanted gold across Broad Street. A small envelope waited in my mailbox when I got home. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. Inside was a card from my grandfather Earl, written in his careful pen. "Family is who shows up, nothing more, nothing less." I held the card for a long time, feeling the paper tremble in my fingers. Aunt Denise came by the next day with coffee and a grin. She carried a small box tied with string. A replacement, she said. Inside was a new mug, pale blue, the glaze smooth and whole. On the side, in neat letters, it read, "Self-respect." I laughed until I nearly cried. We sat by the window drinking coffee, watching the sun roll down over the rooftops. "You know, she said Grandma would be proud of you, not just for fighting back, but for finishing it with grace." I thought about that word grace and how rare it felt in a world built on noise. Later that week, I walked along the James River, the one place that had stayed constant through everything. The air was warm, the water low and slow, glowing orange under the evening sun. I took my phone from my pocket, scrolled through my notifications, then turned them all off one by one. No pings, no alerts, no emergencies waiting. Just quiet, the kind that hums like peace. I looked at the reflection of the sky on the water and thought about everything that had led here. The text that started it all. The overdraft alerts. The humiliation. The receipts that turned into evidence. And finally, the silence that turned into strength. For the first time, I did not feel like a victim of a toxic family. I felt like a witness to my own growth. The revenge had never really been about money. It had been about balance, about reclaiming the emotional and financial space they had stolen. Justice without hate. Truth through proof. Healing through closure. As the last light touched the river, I whispered a small thank you to no one in particular. To Valerie for standing up when it mattered. To Martin and Whitman for believing evidence could still mean something. To Aunt Denise for choosing truth over loyalty. And to the version of myself who finally said no and meant it. When I reached the end of the path, I sat on a bench overlooking the water. The air smelled of rain. Again, a clean beginning. I took out a small notebook and wrote a single sentence. Receipts for peace are not about debt. They are about value. I closed the notebook and smiled. Maybe one day I would publish it a guide for anyone who needed permission to stop funding their own heartbreak. For now, it was enough to know that I had survived and rebuilt without becoming what they were. My phone buzzed once more, a final alert from social media. A stranger had commented under an old post of mine, the one from the library event. She wrote, "Standing up for yourself never looked so peaceful." I typed back, "Truth and closure are the only inheritance worth keeping." Then I put the phone away for good, letting the quiet settle like a soft blanket. The river kept moving slow and steady, carrying the last of the light toward the horizon. I followed it with my eyes until everything turned gold and then gray. Somewhere in that stillness, I knew I had found what every justice story is really about. Not revenge, not payback, but freedom. The kind that comes when you stop proving your worth to people who never intended to see it. If this story touched you, comment standing up for yourself. We choose truth and closure justice without hate and revenge through truth, because peace is the best ending of all.